You know, I love starting my day with you every day. Even though we have been off the road now over 3 months, I have been so joy filled getting to do this time with you every day. And for those of you who didn't see yesterday, good morning, Colby. I got so excited when I saw all the videos being posted. Good morning, Celinda. Good morning, Lacey. Good morning, Pastor Kathy. I got so excited when I looked at the Golden Gate Bridge videos. It's singing. Engineers had constructed something they thought to help with it, and in the process of doing so, they laid these wooden slats. Well, of course, and the trees of the field shall clap their hands. And here we have this wood on the Golden Gate Bridge. Now the wind goes through it, and it makes it a woodwind instrument. And what tones are coming forth from it? The do and the re. It's a minor third with a tenth between them, which musically you'll know it's still the minor third tones, but it has the 10th, which 10th means law, testimony, responsibility. I believe that God is singing through the Golden Gate Bridge right into the city, calling forth for the bride to arise, to take law, testimony, responsibility, to take responsibility to marry Messiah, to become one with the King. I just think it's amazing that right in the gate of the West, God is playing that. What did I see? This righteous revolution revival coming forth first from the West, out of the ocean, and I saw the Ruach breath of God behind the wave. Well, that would be... And as God's breathing through the gate, okay, think about that. God's blowing his breath through the gate, and the gate is crying out in the tone for the do, re. He's crying out to the bride to awaken, to arise, to come forth, to be heard, to be seen, to be revealed. And so, when you think about this, now I'm excited to hear what's going to be singing on the East Coast next. And will it be singing these tones? And if you go deep into one of the videos that I saw was the workers, and they were crossing the bridge on like a golf cart. So as you moved across the bridge, more tones were added, which is amazing, which is what happens. The closer you get to God, the more you hear, the more you can respond to. And I just heard so many different tones, overtones they called them. But the further away videos, those that were far, far away, I mean, it's loud. It's not like, oh, can you hear it? It's like the one article that I read said many people are covering their ears like it's driving them crazy. And I'm like, Lord, I know your sound can drive people crazy when they don't respond. So let's be a people who respond to the sound of God. And this Saturday, the June 13th, we are going to do another virtual conference. It won't be 3 hours long. I'm not quite sure. That's why I didn't put how long it'll be, but it'll start at 10 a.m. West Coast time. And then I know I'm just going to worship a lot. I feel that. And I'm also going to release that worship tones that Laura Kokenauer helped me put together on the do, the re, the so, the ti, and we'll release that again. So have your shofars and your instruments and your voices ready. And hey, if you can get a bridge to sing, this would be the perfect time to do it. And let's release this sound again 14 days after we did before. And why do I use that word 14? Because 14 is the number in Hebrew for salvation. And it's a powerful number because it's doubled, it is finished. God said in Genesis, it is finished. Jesus said on the cross, it is finished. So we're aligning our tones, even down to the days. We're aligning our tones with the first release. Now 14 days later, we're aligning our tones to release, to worship to bring forth worship, and then we'll bring it into the earth once again through technology, through the airwaves, and we are fighting principalities and powers and rulers of darkness and spiritual weakness in high places. That's Ephesians chapter 6. So I'm bringing this forth for you before I get into chapter 18, just because I don't want to forget to remind you, please join us live at 10 a.m. West Coast time on Saturday, June 13th. We'll be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Salem Family Ministries YouTube channel. And I want to remind you also, be signed into YouTube and be subscribed to our channel, and please give comments, and if you have things you want to say, please type them in, because Stephanie will be looking at your comments and be feeding them to us. So that's awesome. Okay, let's get into chapter 18. It's a short chapter, but wow, it has a lot in it. I am noticing here in chapter 18, out of these, I wish I could show you, I don't know if I can show you my notes all over my Bible here. And in chapter 18, I think it's only 7 verses. I wrote all over it, so I can't even see. I think it's 7 verses. But I first started in my Spirit-Filled Life Bible this morning, and then I went to my Amplified, and then I read it in the Passion Translation. I read the commentaries throughout, and my cousin Lacey and I were talking this morning already, and she thinks that this refers to America. I can't see that, but I will say this. Everything that you read in the Bible, you should be able to relate to yourself. You should be able to make it right now speaking to you, because this is a right now word left behind, a legal document, God's last will and testament. That's what it's even called. His last will and testament left for us. So every word of it is current to us. It's present tense. And so any word you read in the Bible should be able to speak to you personally, where you are. We should be able to equate it to our nation, our family, our personal lives. What's going on in our nation should be relevant according to the scriptures. So, in a sense, I agree with you, Lacey, but on another hand, just from the specific call of the scripture, let's talk about what I heard the Lord say. It says a prophecy regarding Cush. Now, Cush is the land of Ethiopia, but it's not just Ethiopia. It would be what we would call modern day Sudan, but it's more than just that too. It is it has well, let me just look at it. I'll show it to you. It's in the this one happens to come out of the Spirit-Filled Life. No, it didn't. It came out of the Amplified. So thank all of you for joining me this morning. I see several of you with us, and I'm trying to hold on to all my Bibles, and my fan is blowing because it's hot here again. But it talks about this land being a land that is modern day parts of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. So it's like the lower part of Egypt, and then Ethiopia, it would be Cush, and then now it's called Sudan. So when you read more than one commentary, you get more than one perspective. Here it talks about that this is a prophecy regarding them. It doesn't say against them. It says regarding them. So that's an interpretive word there. The land of whirring wings that is beyond the rivers of Cush. Now, we would think, helicopters, but no. Now, helicopters are very relevant with this part of the country. Why? Because the countries are small. I mean, Israel is the size of New Jersey. And so they don't need fighter jets unless they're going somewhere else other than their land. They need fighter jet helicopters because it's a very small portion of land. Egypt, I've been in Egypt. I've crossed out of Israel and gone into Egypt. And it's a bigger nation, but still not huge, not what we call huge, like America. And these lands, they border one another, and it goes right on into Africa, and of course Sudan is in that northeastern point, going right out of Sudan and Cush or Ethiopia, right into Egypt and right into Israel, and it would not be that far in comparison to how we are used to calling far here in America. Now, when it says whirring wings, though, it's not talking about jet helicopters, even though that could apply to modern day. At this time, it was talking about the tsetse fly, or the warships that were big, massive sailboats. And if you've been on a big, massive sailboat, it makes a sound. It's kind of a whirring sound because of the, I think this calls it papyrus vessels. It's almost like paper vessels. It's fabric, of course, that makes up the sails. But the sails, when wind goes through, just as we're looking at the Golden Gate Bridge right now, when wind passes through these type of things, it brings about a sound. Thank you, Pastor Kathy. It brings about a sound that is heard. So here they call it whirring wings. That's beyond the rivers of Cush, sending their messengers by the way of the Nile. That's why we're thinking it could be the tsetse fly because it comes by the way of the Nile. But also the sailboats, the warships come up by the way of the Nile to try to bring about a war against Egypt, against Israel, always against Israel. And here there's an alliance trying to be made. Go, you swift messengers, to a tall, smooth-skinned people feared far and wide. And that's why Lacey was thinking America. But in the sense, it could be, definitely. But in this particular case, it is talking about Ethiopia. And it's talking about the Sudan, modern day. To a mighty conquering nation whose land the rivers divide. Now, when it says that, it's talking specifically about Ethiopia, or as Cush, had come up at one point in time. That's not in the Passion Translation commentary, but at one point in time in the 700s, they had come up and conquered Egypt for about 60 years. So they're a people that Egypt should fear, a people to be feared because they had conquered them. Everyone, everywhere, all who dwell on the earth, when a signal flag is raised on the mountain, take notice. When a shofar is blown, listen, these are all war signs. When a signal flag is raised, it's telling everyone what to do because they didn't have walkie-talkies. They didn't have headsets and technology. They used signs like signal flags, and the flag that they would put up on the mountain would tell everyone what to do. What's going on? Have we conquered? Can you go in? Should we back off? Should we retreat? All the flags would tell them that, and then the shofar would tell them when to go. That would be the sound. So we need to have our eyes tuned to what God is showing us and our ears tuned to what God is telling us. We need to see and hear. To him who has eyes to see and ears to hear, the Spirit of God is talking to us through signs, which the Golden Gate Bridge is a definite sign that we are on the right track with the sound waves that we're releasing. And also what we see and what we hear. So the signal flag and the shofar are war signs. It's telling us what's going on. Thank you, Lacey. Viola, that's my grandmother and Lacey's grandmother, and she was a great teacher. I'll tell you someday a story I read recently about a man who has now been a Methodist minister for many, many years. Well, I'll just tell you quickly. And there was a story that was written about him in one of the Methodist papers. His name is Glenn Ray. And it was actually his family and my family that had the car wreck in 1968 that caused me to have my back broken and my left leg was crushed and I went through the windshield and all this. And it was his mother, Glenn Ray's mother, that was killed that day. Long story, sorry, didn't mean to get into all the details, just to give you a little history of it. But what I didn't know, and Lacey, I don't know if you've read this story either, was there was a story written about his testimony, and his testimony was when he was about 5 years old, he was diagnosed with polio. And in the story that was written, it tells how he was taken by his parents to the Methodist Church, and the resident prayer warrior, Viola Pruitt, prayed for him, and God healed him, and he did not have polio for the rest of his life. God healed him that night in the Methodist Church by the resident prayer warrior, Lacey, yours and my grandmother, Viola Ray Pruitt. So, wonderful story, huh? And she was a great storyteller and a great Bible teacher, and I thank you so much for that compliment. Here it says, when the shofar is blown, listen. Here is what the Lord Yahweh said to me. I will rest calm and confident. Now, notice who's talking. The Lord, Yahweh, commander of angel armies. is saying this. I will rest calm and confident as I look from my dwelling place, serene as on a pleasant summer day or a cool, refreshing cloud in the heat of harvest. Now, what that means is that God is saying to them, do not make an alliance with Ethiopia against Assyria. Because if you do, King Hezekiah, I will not intervene. When he says, I will rest calm and confident as I look, as I watch from my dwelling place, he was saying, be careful who you make alliance with and who you think you're going to bring down. Because here's what happens. King Hezekiah was planning on making an alliance with Ethiopia, with Cush, and he was planning to bring their warships up, and they were going to, in his mind, they were going to defeat Assyria. But God plainly told him, you do this, you do it without my consent and without my help. I am the commander of the angel armies, and I will not send them to help you. Wow. You see why you need to hear the voice of the Lord? You could have just read right over that and never saw it. We need to understand the power of our prayers, and then in our listening prayers to hear the voice of God. Here, King Hezekiah was being given a warning through the prophet Isaiah. You best not make an alliance with Cush against Assyria, for God will just watch and not intervene. Wow, that is a powerful statement. God is saying, I will not help you, Hezekiah. You best not do this. Before a cool, refreshing cloud in the heat of harvest, before the harvest when the bud is ripening, he's given them a timeline. And the flower finishes, he will take his pruning hooks and cut off the shoots and remove them. Who will do that? God will do that. And that's not going to be good. They will all be left for the birds of prey on the mountains and for the wild animals to devour. This actually could mean in the natural this will happen, birds of prey and wild animals. But it's also a supernatural reference. And the supernatural reference is demonic powers. So there will be demons involved here, and I'm not sending angels. So that's what God is saying. I'm not sending angels to fight the demonic powers. You had best listen to me when I'm telling you to do something or not to do something. So birds will eat them throughout the summer. In other words, it's going to last a while. So you need to make sure you're listening to me. And the animals will gnaw on the bones of the fallen all winter. And if you've been with me for months, you're going to remember that I said when this all started, this is not going to be over in a week or two. It's not going to be over even in a month or two. This is going to last a while. And I was not specifically talking about COVID-19, but I'm talking about the effects of the choices that are being made from government. Here we have Hezekiah, God speaking directly to the king. And so God is now trying to talk to America. You're right about this, Lacey. God is talking to the kingship, the leadership of America. And if we do not get involved with our prayers, God is saying, I'm not going to intervene with this. I'm going to let it run its course. We need to be prepared to allow God to run his course throughout this nation. I hate what I see happening here, but I also know what can happen out of situations like this are great revivals, a great turn of people back to God. When things happen, and you can go back 100 years past and the pandemic that happened and the revival that came forth out of it, you can go back 1,000 years ago and look at a pandemic and the revival that came out of it, all the way back to the original era called Renaissance, came right out of the Black Plague. So there is something that we can be looking to come out of this. And that's what we need to be always searching for. What is God going to do out of a situation? Because we're always wanting God to deliver us from a situation, when most of the time he will bring something out of the situation that'll be a blessing to us. So that's what we need to be looking for. Now he goes on to say, at that time, last verse, and it's the exact same thing he said in the beginning. At that time, a tall, smooth-skinned people will bring gifts of tribute to the Lord Yahweh, commander of angel armies. They are a people feared far and wide. That's because they had conquered them for 60 years. A mighty conquering nation whose land the rivers divide. Now this is the two rivers. I believe it's called the White Nile and the Blue Nile. That's where they divide, but it's the big Nile River. To the Lord Yahweh, commander of angel armies, there are people feared far and wide, a mighty conquering nation whose land the rivers divide. They will bring their gifts to Mount Zion. Oh, hope, 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 hope. The place of the name of the Lord Yahweh, commander of angel armies. What does that verse mean? This means, and this is so exciting to me, this means that both Jews and Gentiles will be saved through Messiah. So what he's saying is the reason that he's not intervening, and the reason he's saying don't align yourself with Cush, don't come against Assyria, is because from Cush, from Assyria, from Israel, from God's people, I'm going to bring a massive revival, and they're going to come to me through the platform of worship. That's what Zion always means. Again, go back to Hebrews chapter 12 and read that. God is speaking to us about our divine worship. He is speaking to us about a revival that he is releasing even now on the face of the earth through our worship, which is why I want to release this Saturday, this sound, because there is out of this massive whirring of the wings of the enemy trying to defeat us, God says, I'm bringing revival forth through the platform of worship, through tones, through sounds, through intervals, through not bringing people into the glory of God, but people who are already in the glory of God, worshiping from the glory of God. Now, did you get that? Because we have spent decades singing songs trying to drag people into the presence of God that don't want to come. But they, when you sing that song, I come in. No. God is talking about a shift, and we shifted on Pentecost. And it became a new sound, a sound not trying to coerce people or coax people into the presence of God. Nope, that season is over. If people come, they come. But it's not our responsibility anymore to get them in the presence of God. It's our responsibility to get in the presence of God, stay in the presence of God, and worship from the presence of God. And that is the birthing from the womb Renaissance sound that is coming forth from the do, re, Renaissance, reset, restore, revive, replenish, reset. All the words are coming forth because it's a tone. Redemption, that's what 20 means. Redeemed, that's what 2020 means. Double redeemed, the double sounds of re, and that's why I believe remember what I said? Re. What are the tones coming out of the Golden Gate Bridge right now? It's the do, and not the first re, but the second re, an octave higher. It is do and not do, di, re. It's re, do, re. That's the tones coming forth. If you listen, you will hear it. That's the double re, the double sound, that tenth between do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do, re. Those are the two tones. Go listen to it. You're going to love it. That's the 2020 sound that God is blowing through that bridge, and out of it is coming the most amazing sound. God is calling forth for the bride to come forth and worship him. Every people, just like the last verse we just covered, all people will come forth through the Messiah and worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords through the do, re, double redeemed. Hope that makes sense. If not, watch it over and over and over. And I am going to be starting to shift things from IGTV, and I'll do it one chapter at a time. I already have on YouTube chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'll do my best to figure out how to put chapter 5 over there today, and then I'll try to do that. As I do that, I'll take it off of IGTV. So just so you know what I'm planning. Hope that makes sense. I hope you got it. Mwah! I love all of you. We'll come to you tomorrow with chapter 19.